I love to challenge myself. So that's why I will make those opportunities for myself, whether it's in class, whether it's a play, whether it's, whatever it is, I'll find ways to challenge myself, so that I'm not just stuck being a gynecologist.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Tim Bagley is an actor. He sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your process when you get a new role?
Yes.
What is like your first step in to this person?
The first thing I do is I read the script. I read the scene. Sometimes, you don't get the whole script. You just get a scene, or you get 3 scenes and they don't show you the whole pilot or whatever, or the feature film. They'll just give you the sides. And I read what I can. I try to get as much information as I can. I also look up who's directing. I look up, what they've done before, so I get a sense of, how they like to work. And because everybody works differently, and so if I've seen 2 or 3 of their films, or their, something they've directed or acted in, I kind of get a sense of how they work. But basically the first thing I do is I look at the script, I read it, a few times without any kind of judgment. I just try to read it. And then as I read it, I kind of figure out, what am I doing here in this scene? What is going on? What is the scene about? Why is it in this episode or whatever?
What is this character doing?
First I think about the scene.
Yeah.
And then I think, why is my character here? What am I doing in this scene? But you have to kind of, first of all, understand why the writer wrote the scene,
right,
and figure out why it's there. And then I figure out, why are they bringing me into this? What do you think I would, could help this scene? What can I bring to this that somebody else won't do? And so I just kind of always look at it from my point of view. A lot of times when I was younger, I used to go to coaches and stuff, but they would try to get me to do what they thought it should be. And what I've learned is that, I will know what it is and how I want to do this. And then I prepare it that way, and then I figure either the director or whoever is deciding, the casting director, will like what I do or not.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when I'm there, they'll give notes and they'll say things. Sometimes now, though, I'll get straight offers. And so it will be different, because I have to still go through the process of breaking it all down, figuring out what I'm doing in the scene, figuring out why the scene is there and all that. And then I think about how I should play this. And I never think in terms of, how can I make this funny? I think a lot of actors do that. I always just think, why am I saying this? Why am I doing this? And I think that if I get specific about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, the humor will be there.
Yep.
And if it's not, at least I'll be grounded in logic.
Right.
So that's kind of what I try to do. But I know a lot of people are like, how can I make this funny?
And then that makes it not funny, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it works for some people. I just don't think like that. I think that
if the writing is right, if the writing is funny, if you just follow the logic, it will be funny.
Yeah, and then there are always little wrenches and things thrown in. I worked on a job where I prepared everything the way I wanted to do it, and then the director said to me, no, you are gay in this. You have to be gay. And I said, I am gay. And she said,
already done, bro.
Yeah. And she was like, no. You have to be flamboyant gay. You have to be a gay clown is the term she used. And I said, oh no, I don't want to do that. I know what you're saying, and I don't even think you can say that anymore. and I think that when that comes up, that kind of thing comes up, I just try to stay in what I want to do, and I try to convince them why they don't want what they think they want.
So you push back. You're not afraid to.
Mm-mm. When I was younger, I probably, went along with stuff, but now it's like a lot of times they'll have an idea of what the character is, and I don't know, usually it's a stereotype or whatever, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, is that the problem when you're given an offer? Because that wouldn't happen in an audition, right?
Right.
You would find that out. So do you actually worry when you show up on a set of an offer, like, well, no one has seen this yet? I don't know what.
That's right. It's a worry. I don't really worry too much about it, because what's happened as you get older, you get more confidence, and you feel kind of like, this is how I want to do it. And I feel very just kind of okay with that.
Yeah.
And then if they want me to do something, I try it. I'm open. I try it. If it doesn't work, I can feel it, and I'm sure they can too. So I don't know. It's an interesting conundrum, being auditioning for something and earning it, then seeing all the people they need to see,
right,
and then you getting the role,
right,
as opposed to a straight offer. But then I feel like when they're hiring me and it's a straight offer, they've seen me and they want me to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so then I just kind of prepare it accordingly. And that's kind of how I
can adjust.
And then a lot of times they give me little, they'll give me adjustments and stuff, and I love it.
Yeah.
I'm from the improv world, so I'm very open to just in the moment figuring things out and doing that's all great. But if it's something that feels not authentic or not real human, because sometimes, I think everything that I do, I want it to feel like it's logical.
Yes.
And
exactly.
and human, and not just a one-dimensional version of something.
Yes. I think we have to talk about the broken terrarium in the middle of the floor.
Oh, that was one of my, I think it was my first audition. I remember the casting director, and there was a terrarium. I don't know how you found this out. There was a terrarium in the middle of the room on the floor.
Audition room. There's a person in the room, a table
in the room, and I behind her
but
desk.
A terrarium.
And there's a broken terrarium, and I walked in and I said, "How did what happened? How did this happen?" And she said, "If one more actor asks me about the broken terrarium, I am going to lose my mind." And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And I thought, as I went and sat next to her, I was like, "Tim, why would you bring it up? Like, what's the matter with you?" And it was, I think, my first big audition. And then we read through the script, but I was just so upset with myself for bringing it up. And it wasn't until months later, I was laying in bed, thinking, why would you do that? And I thought, well, if there's a broken terrarium in the middle of the room, why wouldn't I bring it up? I mean, I don't know what's in a terrarium. It could be,
it's insane.
It could be a snake, or I don't know what's in there. I just see this broken thing with sand.
It's just odd.
Yeah. And so then I remember thinking, okay, so she probably was having a bad day, and I can't let somebody else's shit bother me.
Yes.
So I thought my lesson after, beating myself up for a few months about that, my takeaway was, whatever is going on with somebody, don't bring that into you. Yes. That's their stuff.
Yes.
And it's not your business. And so I still think that it's perfectly normal to ask somebody if
Yes.
there's a broken terrarium in the
And
middle
you
of the room.
can't beat yourself up about that.
No, but I did.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I think that the thing about that is that whatever is truthfully going on with people, that's what you always want to try to get at in every part of life.
Yes.
And so to suddenly feel bad like that, I asked that to, be made to feel bad.
Yeah.
I just remember when I sat up in bed and I was just like, of course I'm going to ask about a broken terrarium in the middle of the room. Why wouldn't I? What, am I crazy? And then she kind of attacked me. She was just upset.
Yeah.
And, God only knows what happened. Probably she had an actor that had it with her attitude and just took it off and slammed it in the middle of the floor. I don't know what happened. I'll never know.
But it's like having an elephant in the room
right,
and saying,
exactly.
why are you talking
Right.
about the elephant
Right, exactly.
in the room? Because there's an elephant in the room.
Exactly.
That's why.
Exactly. And I remember when I figured it out laying in bed thinking, there could be ants in there. There could be, I don't know what's in a terrarium. There could be, hermit crabs. It could be anything. And why wouldn't I want to know?
It'd be weird not to.
Yeah.
Also.
It's like walking in and seeing a dead body in the middle of the room and just walking by it and going down and saying, okay, let's
normal.
read.
Let's just
let's
normal
read.
here.
Let's get to our audition. Of course you're going to say,
Yes.
well, why is this person dead in the middle of your floor?
And I'm so glad you came to that realization. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You did that for yourself and you corrected the guilt you gave yourself. That is important.
Yeah, and that's been my whole life, is figuring out how to undo all the trauma. How to figure out how to, deal with all the things. But, I'm doing okay. But I remember the big takeaway with that is I thought, these people are human beings and they have bad days.
Yeah.
And this lady, snapped at me, and she might be really used to yelling at people. I'm
Right.
not really accustomed to being yelled at like that. And it was upsetting for me, but, for somebody else, they'd probably think,
Right.
they wouldn't worry about it. But I just, that's funny. I don't know where you found that, but
I think you told that story
somewhere I'm sure
But I think it's
did.
important.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still do this, but when I heard also in an interview you talking about how you still go to class and and it's almost like for you a way to dip into things that are not generally offered to you so that you keep that part of you, keep those muscles working on things that where if you do get picked for something like that you're able to show those muscles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you still do that?
I do. I do. I've always done this, and it's, I never really went to Yale drama school or, Juilliard or any of that. I just kind of have taken classes along the way. And one of my first acting classes, I started out as a dancer. And I danced for a year with Mitzi Gaynor.
Incredible.
And then I started I realized that dance was actually a skill that I didn't have.
Yeah.
And I thought, let me just start taking acting classes because I could do that,
Yeah.
as long as I want to. And so I started. Gordon Hunt. And Helen Hunt was in the class. And so then during the pandemic, I was on some Zoom thing and Helen was there and she said she had to go, teach her class.
Continuing her dad's class.
Continuing her dad's class. So I sent her a little private text saying, can you tell me about your class? And I ended up doing that during the pandemic.
That's cool.
On Zoom.
Yeah.
With her. And that was... with her, I always do stuff like, Glenn Ross I did in there. I did To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus Finch. These are roles that I would never get cast as in the real world. But they're challenging for me as an actor to believe that I'm this person.
Yes.
And there's value in, even with Atticus Finch, I've never played a lawyer, but now I've been in a courtroom in my mind, you know, like in my acting class, I've been, you know, that character, a lawyer. And so that if I am ever in a situation, it doesn't feel like it's the first time.
Yes.
And so, and then also whenever I challenge myself, the fun thing about acting to me is not playing the same thing over and over. It's challenging myself with something new. I remember when I did Knocked Up, and I played a gynecologist. The next, 15, 16 auditions were for gynecologists. And I played a few of them. I was a gynecologist on Desperate Housewives. Like I did a few of them.
Yeah.
But then I literally said to my agents, I literally need you to think outside the box. I was like, I just, it's like I've
cornering the market.
I've done this, and I don't want to be Hollywood's, go-to guy for gynecologists. And then,
did you ever have to tell them anything like that before or since?
Oh yeah, I always, if I feel that I'm doing the same thing over and over, I say, I really want to try to do something like this, or whatever. I ask them to look for things for me,
and they do that.
They do. But a lot of times, what happens is in the casting community, they'll say, "Oh, who's the guy? Tim Bagley was a gynecologist and Knocked Up, and he's done it like a few times. Let's bring him in." And that's kind of how that happens. Or they'll,
it's so sad they can't get over that. They can't think outside the box.
Well, here's the thing about that I'll say. I understand it, because I'll see somebody in a performance and I'll see them, and it's hard for me to think of them. I mean, I forget the little actress's name, but that was in the piano, and then she. Do you know who I mean?
You mean Anna Paquin?
Yeah. Anna Paquin. Every time I see her, I have a feeling of resentment towards her, because she snitched on her mother, and because of her mother had her fingers cut off. So no matter what she's doing, there's always a part of me that's a little
powerful.
Bit like, I don't like this girl. I don't trust her. And so what really that comes from is I loved her performance. Yeah. And I never really got over it.
Yeah.
And so I think of her as that. And I think that some people, some actors, they'll get known for something, and it's hard to think of them in another way. And so, it's, I think, kind of the actor's job to figure out how to shake that up, whether you're doing plays, whether you're doing, independent films, whatever you can do to make sure that you play something else and show them something else that you can do. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll end up being the gynecologist in everything you do, always.
Yes. And this role that you call one of your favorite jobs ever in Somebody Somewhere, Brad.
Yes.
Feels like different than anything you've ever done, right?
Yeah. When I got this job, I got called at home by Bridget Everett, and she asked me if I could sing opera, and I said, no, I can't. And she was like,
perfect.
She was like, She was like, well, do you know, there's an Italian song called Danza Danza Fanciulla Gentile. And I was like, no, I don't know what that is. She was like, well, that's a song that I'd like you to sing. And so I said, okay. And she said, this is how we want to introduce your character. And she said, you only need 8 bars of it, 5 to 8 bars or something like that. But just, we want to have a little piece of you singing this song. And I was like, okay. So I Googled it, and it was Italian. It's opera, and I just was like, this can't be the song she wants me to sing. I have no idea. So I hired a guy that was a voice teacher.
Oh my God.
And he showed me how to figure out how to, learn the Italian. So I started with just learning the lyrics, learning what it all means and everything, and then learning, how to sing. And he would just say like, he would guide me and say like, open your throat more and, whatever. And so I thought I could do a take on this and make it kind of me, making it funny. But I thought what I think would really be funny and work with the style of this show is if I really did it to the best of my ability. And I knew that it would be tragic. and so
that's heroic.
Heroic. So I did it. I did it like I really thought I was good.
Yeah. And the result is absolute perfection.
But people have asked me like, do you sing opera and stuff? And it's like, no.
That's people who don't know opera like me.
No. And then Bridget gave me a note that day. I had interpreted it and I was doing, singing it and everything. And then she said, just find a spot on the wall and sing it, as well as you can, but just focus on that one spot. And I look absolutely insane.
Yes.
And so it really worked. Like
and Jeff's reactions help you.
Yes. Jeff and Bridget are both laughing at me. And then the beauty of that is that's how they introduced me into the show. And then I give them both St. Louis sushi and they both end up with diarrhea as a result of me. So you think, well, there's no way that I'll ever be a friend of theirs, or
that's what's beautiful about this miracle show.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. But when I read all of that, I thought, oh my God, the idea of giving people, explosive diarrhea is just fantastic, because how does a character recover from that? How am I going to know? Recover from that? Everybody hates me. I brought St. Louis sushi and gave them 2 leads explosive diarrhea. But to me, that's the beauty of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
How much leeway did you have in creating this character? Because it feels like, I'm going to be at a loss here for words here, and it's going to sound like I'm exaggerating. You don't know how much I love this character. This is such a beautiful, beautiful character and a beautiful love story. I'm almost going to get emotional. And it's also very funny, though, of course, but it's not funny in a traditional way.
Right. It's not. I know exactly what you mean. I'll tell you. First of all, they wrote it, so it was written. Bridget and Carolyn Strauss, and then Hannah Boss and Paul Tureen wrote it, and I think that they kind of developed the character and everything, and they kind of ease him in. He's going to these voice lessons, and he's collecting driftwood to make frames for his students. And so little pieces of information came out. And I remember kind of early on deciding that this is a man who something has happened to him where, and I didn't know what yet, but that something has happened, and that he's just trying to go through his life and live as authentically as he possibly can, doing what he enjoys doing to try to grow and learn. And he loves his students, he loves teaching them, and he loves, collecting driftwood and making these frames and stuff for them, and these, whatever it is that, he does with driftwood. And I just thought, I admire that kind of quiet going about the business of your life.
Yeah.
I admire that. And so I was like, I went at it like that. And the brilliant thing about all the writers, the way they write this character is they give him imperfections, a lot of imperfections. So he's not just he's got road rage.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
obviously something, wrong.
Yeah.
And then in season 3, episode 5, you hear a lot of his backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was just beautifully written.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say about that episode, especially the work when we were around the table, I had done all this work, emotional work on every little thing so that there was something meaningful and a memory or, whatever.
Yeah.
I had all this work done.
So that every time you say the line, there's something behind
Yes.
it. There's a root.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I did all that work. And then Lennon Parham, who's a wonderful actor and also a director, and she directed that episode, the Thanksgiving episode. We ran through it once, and I was very emotional talking about it. And she said, I can see all that you've worked on it and everything, but she said, I think that you need to play it like all you want to do is get to your mashed potatoes and gravy, and you don't really want to be answering her questions. These are not discoveries for you. You live this life. So they're not all these discoveries. It's more like you're just trying to answer her question and get to your mashed potatoes. And I thought that was such a brilliant piece of direction.
Interesting, right? Because it's so active too. It's right, and it's such a choice. Like
It's such a specific choice,
Yeah.
but also all the work that I did, you can see it under there.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
see that it's been hard.
Yep.
And that I'm just trying to get to my mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
I love directions like that because it's very human. It's like
Yes.
in real life, if somebody was asking me all about my past and stuff, and there's turkey and mashed potatoes in front of me, I want to eat.
Yeah. Yes. And that's also a story about a director knowing the circumstances of the scene. You know what I mean? Not because that is a circumstance in a scene with a character. Like that's real and that makes logical sense. And it's not, sometimes scenes are not about what's going on with the character. They're about what's happening. And then what's going on with the character is like the byproduct. And
Right.
we get to feel that. But that's kind of an unusual, I mean, is that something though that it feels like this show probably has a lot of moments like that with people making stuff on the show.
I'll tell you what happens is it's very collaborative on that show, and everybody is very open to trying things. And it's I remember in season 2, I forget which episode, but I'm on a park bench with Jeff, Joel, and we're talking, and Jay Duplass was directing that episode, and he said, I know that you know how to deliver jokes and you know how to, move through a scene. And he said, doing comedy, a lot of times, people direct you to move quicker. And that's really true. They always say, get through it quickly. He said, in this, what I want you to do is sit on that bench and just look at him and take him in and really listen to what he's saying, process it, and then respond, and just take your time. And don't worry about joke lines. Don't worry about any of that. Just kind of listen and respond. I know that sounds so basic.
Right.
It sounds so basic, but I'm trained like a monkey to, go quickly and find the joke and all that kind of stuff. So it was a very important note for me to get, and I was very appreciative of that with Jay Duplass. And once I went through that scene and understood how to work like that, I just felt like the rest of the, work on the next season and everything, I just felt like I knew how to do it.
Yeah.
It was just kind of being present and listening and not really worrying about pace.
Yeah.
Or all the things that you learn in theater and in sitcom and stuff like that.
So when you come out of this, does it make you angry that this is a rare experience?
I'm obviously not as rageful as you are.
No, you are.
No, I wouldn't say that I'm angry. What I would say is I'm grateful for the opportunity, and it's just different choices.
Absolutely.
I think that I'm grateful to have had this. What I feel sometimes is I feel bad for the people that have to deal with me now in sitcoms and things where they're like faster, and I'm gonna be like, okay, but I'm gonna go at my own pace. Like I want to be able to do whatever is required of me, and not just be an asshole and only work this way. Even though I love working like this. And then also the other thing is, so many gay characters are written as kind of jokes and one-dimensional, and it is just such a joy to be able to play somebody that's just like a full character and not just a side joke.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I can do all that.
Yeah.
I can do all that, but it's, and it's great, I'm grateful for those jobs too, but it's just such a pleasure to explore what it's like at my age to be falling in love with somebody and trying to figure out how to navigate myself with somebody in that way, because they don't write a lot of characters like that for people like me.
Yes, it's amazing. And my favorite moment, I think, is when Joel discovers the Corningware.
Oh.
And you basically give him a tour of the cabinets. And that one piece of Corningware is by itself on a shelf.
Yes.
I mean, I'll never forget this.
It's such a great point. I know this. When we ran through the scene the first time, I hadn't seen that. The cupboard was closed, and I opened up the cupboard, and it's like when you realize how crazy you are for the first time, something in life that you do that's really insane.
Yeah.
I opened it up, and I looked at the thing, and I just started laughing, and I looked back at him, and we were just running through it.
Yeah.
But it was just like, oh, I'm a crazy person. And this is what I love about the way they write for my characters. So many things that I do are wonderful things that Brad does.
Yeah.
So many are, great, but they show little pieces of him that are just to show that he's absolutely imperfect. And that Corningware, that's like a crazy person.
Yeah, and Joel has to accept this.
Yeah.
And, or at least have to appear like he's accepting this.
And it's so much fun to play with him. I mean, he's so smart and so funny and so in tune with all the idiosyncrasies of the show. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of innately played those scenes when we were moving in together with this kind of, it's kind of like we're almost like being polite with each other. Mm-hmm. In real life, I would be like, no, that's not going there. Or, you know what, we're taking this down. This is some bullshit, and I don't want this in my kitchen, whatever. Or I would call out, something and say, this is not the way this is going to be. But the way they were both so happy to be together, and they're trying to figure it out, and they're trying to be polite. And what I liked about it is that everybody that's been in a relationship that moves in with somebody has some form of that. Like that's a common thing. But to see these two people of a certain age trying to be their best selves as they do it, I thought was funny.
Yes. And it's also beautiful.
It's beautiful. And it's all in the writing. I mean, all I have to do is be there.
Yeah. That's what that's like an actor dream, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to create things, but when a script is so good that you just have to say the lines almost and just be, then that's the dream.
Yeah. and then but to show how collaborative the show is, we would get ideas from the DP, we would get ideas from everywhere, and the art director is the one that lined those Corningware pieces up so crazy. And so I just remember opening the cabinet and I just started laughing because in real life, what I would feel like is, well, now you know, I'm a little crazy.
Yeah.
And so, but to me, the way that was set up by the the set decorator, to me was everything. I mean,
See, that's an example of like you as an artist responding to another artist, thinking of you and your artistry, right? And then you're able to like work together. It's the beauty of film. Is this.
Yes.
And you're able to like bring out the best in the moment because of what they did for you and your character.
Exactly. And that they took the time to figure out, oh, this will be funny if Brad did it this way. This will be funny. And then, like I said, I didn't know. I just opened the cabinet and thought, okay. But it's the beauty of of a collaborative show like that.
And Jeff has a funny line. He's like, "Oh yeah, of course, that one has to have its own play."
You have to. Yeah, you don't want to stack them. You don't want to stack them.
That's it.
And I say something like, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that." It's so sweet.
See, that's what we're doing as an audience with this show. We're laughing, but our smile is bigger. The smile is bigger than the laugh. Our smile is at the beauty, and the laugh is coming out of it. Like, that's a rare thing.
Yeah.
It's really rare.
I noticed that, watching Bridget's work in this is always exciting for me because I never know what she's going to do.
Yeah.
I never know what she's going to do, but I know that it's always going to be kind of beautifully imperfect. And that there was one scene where my character tells her that she's got a hangover, and my character tells her that Joel has shared with me that she's got financial problems and that we could help her out or something. And she's like, "Oh, he did." And she covers it and she doesn't show me at all that she's upset, but then she leaves and you see her go to the bank and she's got like $200 and some left in her account. And she's got a hangover and she's driving and she was burping, like she was crying, she was crying, but also she was burping and wanting to vomit. And then I think she leans out the window and vomits. And then they stay on her. I think Rob Cohen directed that episode, and he stayed on her as the truck pulled away, and you see her trying to flick something off her hand. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it was, but it's those kinds of details where she's so, messy. And human. Yeah.
I mean, again, my anger, but why is this rare? I want shows like this. I just want shows like this.
Oh, that's so nice.
Want them.
I mean, I do too. I do too. I look for shows that are meaningful. I like things that are funny, but heartfelt. And genuine, and there's so many things like that about this that I really value. Not everybody likes that, but it's what I value.
And what do you do now that you've done so much comedy, so many times you've gone on a show that's running great and done your own brand of comedy on that show. And now you go and you do this kind of comedy, which is rare, like we're talking about. This kind of, almost like, luckily, you have so much drama chops that were able to be utilized in this comedy show that's technically, I guess, a comedy. And it's still funny, but it's also heartwarming, and it's all because, luckily, they cast people like you that are able to do this kind of stuff. But now that you've accumulated all of this knowledge about what works with comedy, and now you go on to another show, let's just say, and some young person is back there trying to tell you how to do comedy.
Yeah. Or doing it and doing it wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
So
that happens.
what do you do?
I just kind of do I do my thing. I never
Ignore it and do your thing?
I always find, like, if I'm interacting with somebody like that, it's very rare, but if I am, I'll just think, well, that's who this character is. That's who they are, and I will respond accordingly. I don't know. I don't really have a lot of things like that, but I think that what's gonna happen, I've done sitcom stuff since I did this.
Yeah.
And I just really tried to bring as much of this kind of work to what I'm doing. I'm trying to do that more and more. But, if I end up on a show like JoJo and the Chimp, where everything's like boom, boom, I just know that a little piece of me will be dead inside and will be wishing that I was doing something better.
Yes. Is there a role or a type of role that you want to do that you're not given the chance to do, and that you want to show that you can do it?
Well, that's a good question. Here's the thing. It's why I take class, because I can do anything I want to in a class, and I can play any kind of role I want to and challenge myself. And so I have the experience of, trying things that are different.
Yeah.
I never get cast like as the killer or the bad guy or the, guy that, the abusive, husband.
Yeah.
I never get cast like that. And that's fun to play for somebody like me who's not by nature that way.
Yeah.
So I get to try things like that in an acting class,
Yeah.
where I won't get cast like that in the real world. So that when people see me do something that they didn't expect to see me do, I'm never surprised, because, I understand what the process of acting is, and my, classmates have seen me,
Yeah.
do things. And, but that's, I just think that the other thing that I want to say about acting is I feel like it's our job to always be challenging ourselves. And so if I have fears about something, or if I feel like I can't identify with that whatsoever, I try to find, some kind of character that I can play in an acting class or something like that, so that I can find that part of myself. And even basic things like, like I always had a fear of stand-up comedy. So I got myself into, I made myself do stand-up, and I do it periodically around LA. I never go out on tour. I never, ask people to pay money to see it, but I do it to challenge myself.
Yes.
And get beyond my comfort level, because I think that as an actor, you always want to try to stretch and grow and be beyond your safety, comfort level.
Yes. Yes. So many people actually don't do that, right? They just stay within what they think that they know how to do, or what they're given. And they're like, oh, well, I'm known for this, and I'm doing this, and I could do this well. Let me just keep doing this. But they don't grow as artists.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that it's kind of up to the actor to figure out how to do that, because the way that the business is, at least in Hollywood, it's different in New York. Broadway, you can play different kinds of characters. In Hollywood, a lot of times they will keep you in kind of, a niche.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's kind of up to you to figure out how to keep exploring creatively. Because for me, it's not really about getting other people to see me do that, for them to know that I can play a killer.
Mm-hmm.
It's about me wanting that challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can give that to myself in an acting class. So that's kind of why I do it. And still, so that if the opportunity comes up, Oh, and then I can do it. But I remember one time Keanu Reeves did. Oh, this is so mean that I'm saying this. This is really just awful. But he did a Shakespeare something in a movie. It was, I forget which Shakespearean thing, but he, in all the things when he talked about it, he was like, "This is the first time I've ever done Shakespeare," and then you see him and you think, and I just thought, okay, I need to do Shakespeare. I need to do Shakespeare. And so I studied Shakespeare for a while, just so that I would never be in a situation where where I proudly proclaim, this is the first time I've ever done this. And, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, I think it's kind of our job to make sure that we, challenge ourselves. Keep trying new things. And when you think about something that you're not good at, figure out how to do it.
Yeah. What do you do though to show people that you can do these things when you're not given the opportunity to do that? And whose job is that?
Well, I mean, I think that casting people by nature are going to think, well, this is what he does. Let me call him in for this. Like we talked about before. I think that producers will see you in something and they'll think, oh, let's get him. He's great for that. So I do think it's kind of the actor's job to figure out, how can I do this? Whether it's in plays around town, inviting people to come see you do something different. Whether it's now, you can do a character on, YouTube. You can play something and post it, whatever. I mean, but to me, it's when I get that opportunity, you want to be prepared to step into it, and so that you can play. I remember I did a thing on Grimm, the pilot episode of Grimm, where I played kind of
the wolfy guy.
Yeah, and I was like a postman, and I killed little girls that had little Red Riding Hood. They would wear little red hoods, and I would kill them. And I auditioned because my friend Sean Hayes from Will and Grace
petitioned for you.
He showed me the script, and I said, "Can I audition for this part?" And he goes, "I'd love to see you audition." And I kept doing it, and he kept saying, "We've seen all kinds of people, but you're the best one." But the casting said that it's going to take people out of the show to see you doing that, and because they know you as comedy. And so they kept having me come back, and the network was saying, it's going to take people out of it. And then he ended up going to the head of the network. I hope I'm not telling tales out of school, and he got it cleared. So I got to do it. But
took that much.
Yeah, it took a lot, because
even though people are seeing you doing it great.
But the fear of the casting director was that it would take people out of it to see a comedic guy doing drama, something that was kind of menacing. Yeah. And so I guess, my feeling about it is I love to challenge myself. So that's why I will make those opportunities for myself, whether it's in class, whether it's a play, whether it's, whatever it is, I'll find ways to challenge myself, so that I'm not just stuck being a gynecologist.
Yes. I think you should tell the Friends story.
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
Because I think it's important for people to hear the lesson you got.
Yeah. That's a great story. Okay, so I was hired to play. I auditioned to play a love interest for Lisa Kudrow's character Phoebe on Friends, and he was a health inspector of a restaurant, and he was supposed to recur and do several scenes and be a love interest for her. And I did it, and then after 2 days, I was fired. And
When you say you did it, you mean table reads or
we did
actual...
we did a table read. I was cast in the role.
Yeah.
I did the table read, and we started, in the sitcom world.
Started actually shooting
You
things,
do like 4 days, and then you have shoot day. So it's 5 days to work. And so I had done like, I think 2 days on it. After working on the set for a couple of days, I get a call from Kevin Bright saying, "We're sorry, we love you, but we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole." And I remember that because I just remember thinking, well, shove it harder. But
or I'm round.
Yeah, right, exactly. Anyway, so then...
So that was devastating.
That was
probably.
devastating. And so for like
Were you ever
8
fired from
years,
something?
Not then.
Not as an actor.
No. No, I was fired once before. I was fired when I was a butler at the Playboy Mansion. Okay. I was fired after a year.
Okay.
It's
a whole other story.
It's a whole other story, but it turns out you really can't call somebody cunty if you're the help. That's all I can say about that. Okay, and so what happened with this was, so I get a call from Kevin Bright. He tells me that. Then years go by, 8 years. All my friends, they're just like, "Tim, you've got to let it go." There were a couple friends like banned me from talking about it.
So you're just dwelling on it.
I
You're
was
just bringing it up over and over again.
Over and over. I'd lay in bed at night thinking about getting fired. I had never been fired off a TV show, off a job as an actor. Oh, I also was fired once as a waiter. I waited tables for 1 week, and then I was fired, and I was told to never be in a service position again, and I never did.
Took that advice.
And so, so then what happened was, there was a show called Joey that was a spin-off of Friends. 8 years later, I get called in to audition for this Joey that Kevin Bright was producing. And first thing out of my mouth, driving over there, I was saying, don't bring up Friends, because my friends have always said, just Tim, stop it. Yeah. And I couldn't. And then the first thing when I went into the casting was I said, just so you know, I was fired off Friends, so I can't imagine why Kevin Bright would hire me for this. And they were like, okay. And then I ended up getting the job, and I said to the casting people, does Kevin Bright know it's me? And he was like, yes. And anyway, I go through the week of the job. At the end of the week, I just kept thinking.
You did the role.
I kept thinking. Bows. I do the bows. I come up, and he knocks on my dressing room door and thanks me for being there and tells me that he's been a fan of mine and he just really appreciates me during the show. And I said, well, that means so much to me, especially coming from you in light of our history. And he was like, what history? And I said, well, I was fired off Friends. And he was like, you were? And I said, yes. And he said, what's the role? And I told him, he said, oh, I remember that. Yeah, you were it was supposed to recur. We ended up just, we tried 2 or 3 actors in that role, and we realized it just wasn't a well-written role. So it ended up just being a few lines. So we made it a co-star rather than a recurring, and we it just was a one-time thing. The person that did it, and it was just a few lines or something. And he goes, but I remember that role, and he goes, but we fired people all the time. And I was like, yeah, no, I get it. It was not a big deal. I just acted like it was nothing. Yeah. And then, but I remember when he left, I went and sat down on the couch in the dressing room and I cried because I couldn't believe how I had hung on to that. And then, not too long after that, I did a show called Episodes. Yes. That was David Crane's show. Yeah. And he was just delightful. And he was like, I keep thinking, I can't figure out where I know you from. But I feel like we met years ago and but we never worked together. And I was like, no, we didn't. And I was like, and I was like, I didn't bring up the Friends thing. And I just sat there going, I don't know. And he goes, I feel like, it's through Lisa Kudrow. And I was like, maybe. And I just kind of left it vague like that. But he was so sweet and so great. And then that same year, I auditioned for Grace and Frankie. No, I didn't audition. It was a straight offer for Grace and Frankie. And I showed up on the set, and Marta Kaufman came down and, said, thanks for doing this. We love your work, and we're so glad you're here. And it's so nice to meet you, is what she said. And I said, the pleasure is all mine. And I just kind of realized none of them remembered. Right. It was nothing for them.
Nothing.
And for me, it was everything.
Yeah.
And so I just realized that whatever happened, it would have helped to have known that they tried 2 or 3 other people and then they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't. They ended up cutting it way back, and it didn't recur. That would have been helpful to know. But the big lesson for me was, if somebody fires you, sometimes it's out of your control. There's not a lot you can do, and to take it that personally and to lay in bed at night and think about how you could have done it differently, or what it's like, it just didn't work out.
Yep.
And move on.
Yep.
And
wasted energy.
Yep. And it's like anything in life, like dating or anything, a family relationship, that you suffer with, spiraling, thinking about how can I make this better and all that. And so much of the time it's just kind of out of our control.
That's right.
And with getting fired, the beauty of it for me, and I love to tell that story to young actors, because I just think when you're fired, it just feels so awful, and like you feel like a bad actor. And I just think that it's okay if you get fired.
Yeah.
You just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, but I also think that, and I've worked with all 3 of those people. I never really told any of them,
what you were dealing with.
Yeah, what I was dealing with.
Yeah.
But I've talked about it publicly, so they might hear it at some point. But they're all 3. I've met them all in social situations and worked with them in different, and they're wonderful.
Yeah.
And it just, you have to be able to forgive and move on.
Yeah.
And you can't hang on to things and harbor, resentment or anger.
Yep. Yep.
Which I know is very hard for you.
Yeah, that's very hard for me. I haven't learned that yet.
And also, the acting part of it, like you said, how do you show people that you can do this or that? Like, for me, it's not really about showing people, like the whole, red carpet part of it and all that stuff, I don't really care about. For me, it's always just been the challenge. I was shy as a kid. And so it's been the challenge of trying to fight, work through past my fears and limitations and challenging myself and putting myself in situations. And I've just tried to consistently grow and get better. And I think that that's what the life of an actor is.
Yes.
I just think that it's what it is. And it's not because you're trying to, I never thought about all the, I don't know, the fancy part of acting. I don't know how to say it, but like the red carpets or the, the awards and things like that. It's not why I do it. It's a quiet thing. It's not to show people that I can play a killer. I mean, it's really not that. It's more for me to figure out, if this is an area that I'm not comfortable with, who would I be in this situation? How can I play this and put myself in this situation? And that's, to me, the fun part of acting.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Tim Bagley, thank you so
Of
much.
course. Of course.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.